watched Bridesmaids last night.
Classic. Nice.
Dude, it is so funny. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
That better not have been your first time watching it.
It wasn't my first time. I've seen it many
good.
times.
Good.
Yeah,
Because you'd
but
be in trouble.
no, I love it. I honestly love it. But yeah, I feel like I always slack in the movie watching department compared to Braden. Braden's just like firing off a few a day.
Yeah, dude. Last night I watched Conclave, that new one that was out in theaters.
Yeah, was it good?
It was wild. It was like, yeah, it was good. Cinematography, score was amazing. And then I came home and I watched Smile 2, which was it was scary. It got me.
Really?
It did, yeah.
I didn't think it was scary at all.
That's the cool part about movies, though. It's all so subjective. Like, people can interpret it different ways, and yeah.
100%, yeah. And we can appreciate how much effort goes into it, because it's so easy to just say that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Baz is an award-winning actor from Ireland, and he's done a lot. He's always doing a lot, and so maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about, you know, what you've been up to and things you've been doing in the past couple of years. And
this is my full-time gig, for better or for worse, because as you know, it's so tough making it your sole survival. So yeah, predominantly an actor first, and then progressed into making my own movies. There were several reasons for doing that, but I've always been obsessed with film and have a deep, deep love for it. So just being part of the film industry in any shape or form, getting to express myself. And it was never really the plan to go down the directing route and the writing route, and that's kind of predominantly what I'm doing at the moment, as well as all the hustling. Like I own a production company with my wife, and we shoot a lot of documentaries and commercial stuff just to keep the bills at bay, and do some workshops, teaching workshops, and one-to-one online coaching, and so just when you're in this industry, unless you're one of the very, very lucky ones, you need to have so many side hustle going just to survive. Which I'm sure is the same for you guys in the music world as well. When times are up and down and quiet, you need to have loads of different avenues to get out there. So
100%. We were just talking about that in our last episode. You just never know. You never know what's coming. Next month could be huge paycheck. The next month could be nothing. So I do think, yeah, I know me and Dustin both, like, multiple income streams kind of to support what you're doing,
Absolutely. It's so sporadic. There's no stability really. All you can do is keep trying, and then I talk about it a lot. It's like being ready for when the opportunity comes, because when it is quiet and it is down times, it's very easy to dig yourself in a hole and not do anything, and you haven't done anything for 6 weeks, and all of a sudden you get a phone call. It's like, can you be on set in 3 days? And all of a sudden then you have to click into the go mode. And as tough as it is in quiet times, I always say just try and be proactive and productive and stay sharp and have your instruments ready at all times, because it does catch you on the hop, and you never know where your job is coming from. And prime example, yesterday, and the industry itself is really quiet out there. Anybody will tell you it's 40% downturn on last year, and that's both for actors, production, directors, everybody. It is quiet out there, and just yesterday, I out of the blue just landed a role shooting in London, a feature film, but that came about from an actor that I did a movie with about 3 years ago. He was just another actor in the movie, and he knew the casting director, and they were looking for someone like me, and he suggested me, and then there was a conversation with the casting director, and then all of a sudden now I have a job in London, but you can't plan or predict for that, and sometimes you feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall and nothing's going to happen. And then I always say a phone call or an email can just change everything, but you need to be ready to go when that happens.
Yeah, man.
For sure.
That's crazy. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, me and Braden were just talking about that. So it's like, and this is a question I had kind of written because it interests me. So because it is like so unpredictable, you know, I mean, no day looks alike, obviously. Is there a way you still kind of like to structure your days, at least, you know, whether it be a down, obviously when you're on set, you know, it's just show up for set, I'm assuming, but yeah, like how do you like to structure your days typically if it is more of like like a downtime for that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's tough, and every day is very different. And because this is my full-time gig, on average, I find myself putting about 8 hours into the industry in general. So whether that's writing, producing, directing, acting, workshops, whatever it is, I just find myself that's what I need to do to keep the hustle alive and keep going. Now, not every day is like that, and some days you don't have the motivation, and you know it feels like you're, like I said, banging your head against a brick wall. But a lot of meetings, a lot of meetings, especially when you're you know directing the bigger stuff. The amount of building blocks and talking and meetings, and it's crazy the amount of it, and you have to go through it. That's the process of it, you know. But when you're the director, there's so many um, avenues and different areas that you need to give your voice to. So you could be talking to the casting director on one day, you could be talking to an executive producer on another day, you could be talking to the actors, you could be talking to script supervisors. You know, and these are all conversations that need to be had. And then, you know, going for physical meetings, I'm in London back and forth quite a lot for meetings because that's where the production is based, and it's all good, it's all fun, you know, but it can be like really time consuming and take up your full day before you know it, you know, and you've just been on Zooms, on meetings all day. But that's, you know, part of the process, and I love it. So yeah, it's just, I mean, every day is so different, and then if it is quiet times, then that's when I'll return to my writing, you know, the stuff that I'm passionate about. Or sometimes you just need to chill out and just watch actors roundtables and get inspired again and find some inspiration, or go back and watch movies, which a lot of people in the industry kind of forget to do sometimes. You know, it's our learning curve, and you can learn from the bad ones just as much as the good ones, is what I always say as well. And we know what it takes to make a movie happen. So I have a deep appreciation for anybody that gets it across the line. Even if I think it's shit, I still have so much respect because I know how difficult it is. And for the most part, they had the best intentions. They were, for the most part, usually trying to make the best movie that they possibly could at that time. And then, you know, as we were saying, like, you know, opinions can differ, and it's so easy for someone to just be like, "Oh shit, I didn't like it," you know. But when you realize behind the curtain how much work that is, you know, you still find a room to appreciate it and learn from it as well.
100%, man. Yeah, it's something you don't know unless you do it, really. And me and Dustin worked with you recently on Farlight, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I mean, we've just gotten a taste of it, you know, of how insane it is and how much it takes just to do little things. But yeah, it does seem like, you know, even if you have those kind of downtimes, like you're always trying to make your own stuff happen, which I think can really set you apart, you know.
I think you have to. I think you have to in this day and age. And I mean, look, the industry's always been tough, but at the moment, it's just really tough. And since the writer strikes, and you know, a lot of the investors are afraid to put their money back in, and a lot of the big blockbuster multi-million movies are flopping, like, you know, in the theaters, and the structure of the whole industry is changing, and a lot of people haven't caught up to that. And so I just think the days of just being an actor alone are really tough. You know, they've always been tough, but if you don't have other avenues and other side hustles and something to keep you in the creative industry and make money, and look, I always say life gets in the way. Like, people have to work 9 to 5 jobs. I understand that people have families. I understand it. But just if you're solely doing it and it's your full passion and your time, I just feel like you have to tap into other avenues of it and not just wait for the phone to ring. So that can include, you know, taking the bull by the horns and going and making your own stuff, taking the power back, which I strongly advise people to do. But as you guys know, and as I know, it's you know, it's very easy these days with phones and stuff to record stuff, and I'm fully behind all that. But you know, to go make proper movies and stuff, like there's so much work, and I think a lot of people just don't understand until they go and try and do it, you know, and then it's kind of a wake up call. And that's why, you know, it's an unwritten rule, and uh, it's just basically that, you know, you should make minimum of 3 short films before you make a feature film, because you should make all your mistakes, or not all your mistakes, most of your mistakes on your short films. So they say minimum 3 short films, no more than 5, because then you just continue making short films and you don't progress on to a feature film. Like I said, it's a very unwritten rule, but it's just having the knowledge to go out and get your mistakes out of the way before you commit it to a feature, because so many of them don't make it across the line. They either don't make it out of pre-production, or they do actually get to shooting it and they don't make it out of post-production. I can't tell you how many friends have gone and shot something, and then post-production they just realize that they don't have what they thought they had, or they don't have money for post-production, and you know. So I don't know what your question was, but yeah, just
Me neither. No, it makes total sense. Yeah, I think just from my own experience, just doing Farlight, the post production, since like I'm doing a lot of it myself, it's like it's so easy to be like, okay, we did the shoot, and then you just chill out, and then you're like, oh wait, there's all this other stuff to do, and it's like overwhelming a little bit. So I can definitely understand how that dream, you know, can just dissipate a little bit for people. So kind of going back, this is something I wanted to hear a little bit more about from you, was, you know, just talking about those downtimes and talking about like you always got to stay prepared. You know, there's that whole thing is success is preparation meeting opportunity, which is a hard, you know, it's a hard thing. So was there a point for you when you, like, have you always just been a pretty disciplined guy, or was there a point where you're like, okay, I have to stay on top of stuff? You know, I just always have to stay in that zone. And like, how was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's really tough, and I'm really honest and open with people when I talk about it with other actors and stuff like that. And you know, it's I closed. I owned like tattoo shops over the years, and I closed my last shop over 5 years ago to fully invest in this. Um, and people thought I was crazy, you know, because the shop was busy. It was a gold mine, and this is such a risky industry. But I was turning down stuff because of the shop, and you know, I was drumming in 3 bands, and I had the shop, and then the acting, and I was trying to keep everything going, and I was just getting so burnt out. So I made the decision, and you know, it was definitely a money over passion decision, entering into the world. And there's been many times where I've questioned my decision, and I'm a firm believer in no regrets. You know, like I even have a tattooed across my throat. But you just, you know, when it gets really tough and you feel like you've worked so hard and you've done everything, and I think that's the really tough part. You feel like all your work should be warranted with some kind of reward or some kind of break, or you could get so close to so many things, which I have been. And then the rejection, you know, so much, and you're auditioning and you're taping and you're submitting for funding and you're sending your scripts in and you're like pushing, 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 pushing. Um, and on that you're kind of on a buzz, you know, and then 6 months down the line you get rejected, 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 rejected for all that work, and then you're like, what the fuck did I just spend my last 6 months of my life? And I was really like, you know, excited about the opportunities that this might bring. So they're the really tough times. And the thing about it is, and I've wanted to quit so many times, and I've questioned myself, and I have imposter syndrome like every day. um and this is what I say when I'm coaching in one-to-ones and to actors or whoever is in the industry. It's like, uh, if you don't need to do this and you just want to do it, it's a tough road. And a lot of people with that mentality, they give up. And you can be in the arts and you can be in the acting for social reasons, for confident reasons. That's great, and it can be a fun thing, and you know, it could be local Amdram theater or whatever it is, and that's great. I'm not disparaging that. But if you want to turn it into like a career and a serious thing, you have to need to do it. Like you have to. I can't. Well, I've tried to walk away from it, but it brings me back because it's the only thing that makes sense to me in my life, and my happiest time is being on set. And it's, you know, it's talking about like I said, with the meetings and, you know, directing, and theater, whatever it is, that's where I'm my most happy. And it's such a come down. That's where the addiction comes as well. Like it's such a come down when you're not in that environment. You know, like coming off Farlight, I had the best time. I fucking loved it. And then, you know, you get back to Ireland and for that week, I'm like a lost puppy. Like, you know, I'm like, I want to be back there. I just want to keep filming. I just want to, like, I was so happy in that environment. And I think that's what keeps pulling you back in. So I hope that makes sense. And it's not an elitist attitude of, you know, you need to do it. Or I'm just saying the mentality of it is that if you're not willing to put the hours that you need to put in. So for me, it's 8 hours a day. But if you're not willing to do that and you're not excited to do that and you feel like it's a chore, like, oh, I have to do that, I have to do that. It shouldn't feel like that. It should be all or nothing, you know? So I think that's what keeps me coming back. But it does drive you crazy. It's so crushing. Ask anybody in this industry. It's ruthless. It is absolutely ruthless. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think me and Braden were both talking about this, how it's like you have all these amazing emotions and you feel like you're like totally aligned with your purpose when you're on set and you're doing the thing. And then you come off of it and there's like this massive dopamine drop off essentially. So it's like, yeah, I was going to ask you like what keeps you going and what drives you, but I feel like it is, or at least I feel this way, just starting filmmaking, but this is also parallel to music. It's almost like, you almost feel like you don't really have a choice. And I think, yeah, like you said, if you only want to do something versus you need to do something, that's like a massive difference. And you can kind of see where people separate when times get really hard, because it comes down to like, how can you handle the adversity, you know, being offset when work's not coming in. But yeah, I guess like, I don't know, me and Braden were just talking about that, and I kind of forget where I was going with this as well. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's nice to know like other people feel that way as well. And I guess, do you remember that first time you got that feeling of like being on a set where you're like, oh, like I need to do this. Like this is what I want to do? Because I distinctly remember that. I think we talked about it. Me and Braden like did some extra work on sets in the past, and I remember the first time I was on a set, it was like all of a sudden this massive wave of just like it felt like this like purpose like just hit me, like, wow, I have to pursue this in my life at some point. It wasn't right away because, you know, I did music and I felt that way about music. But yeah, was there a specific moment, I guess, where you're like, holy shit, like I need to do this. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose like going way back, when I did theater, you know, when I was a kid or a teenager, because I never felt like I fit in anywhere my whole life. I always felt like I was different somehow, and only recently, you know, I'm diagnosed with ADHD, and it just answers so many questions to my life as to why I felt the way that I felt and my concentration levels. But if I was hyper focused on something, but I suppose doing theater, um, it was such a release for me, and I could get to express my feelings that I couldn't express in my real life. I was such a frustrated teenager, and I got so much trouble because nobody understood what was going on in my head, including myself, you know. But theater was just such a release for me. So I suppose early on that was great, and then music took over. Music and martial arts took over, and I went away from it. And then when I gradually came back to it, I felt that again. And uh, even in the workshops, we ask people, you know, why do you want to be an actor? And it's such a cliche question, but my God, the answers you get and the emotions that come out, and you discover that one question, you can find out so much about that person, you know. And for me, it's getting to express the emotions that for some reason or another I can't express in my real life. It's getting to go places and go there, you know. So that's for me. And the answer to the when I felt it and when I really like it, I was on sets, you know, years and years ago, but I was always very scared on sets and I was very anxious, and um so it took me a long time to kind of get over that, even though I have a love-hate relationship with it because I still get so anxious around it, but I love it. But you know, being on Farlight, and I'm not just saying it because of you guys, or Brassic, the TV series over here, they were such, you know, happy, collaborative, artistic sets that I really like I didn't feel that anxiety that I normally feel, and I was just enjoying it. And I just wanted to come back, and so yeah, I suppose it just took me a long time to find that. Even though I loved it, it's only in the recent years that I've learned to love it even more.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I guess that kind of goes into something I wanted to ask you, because I know for me, when we worked on Farlight, it was really my first time like acting with someone that wasn't just straight comedy or weird stuff. Like, it was a cool experience for me. And it's funny, I remember you were saying like, oh, it took me like months to get, after I finished my film to feel normal again. And I was thinking like, oh, I'll be fine in a week. It took me like a month and a half to get over Farlight. Like, it was crazy. There was just sometimes, like when we were doing some scenes, like, and I think I mentioned this to you, but like, I really like, it was a new experience for me because I was like feeling your emotion, and it just felt super real, to where I started to get in my head. I'm like, wait, is he like really upset? Is he really feeling this way? But it just like elevated the scenes. And there was one scene when me and you were on the stage that I just distinctly remember. But, like when you're playing a character, is it always just about that for you? Like just whatever I'm feeling, like it's like, does it affect you ever after? Or is it always just like, you're just leaving a piece of yourself here, like, do you ever bring anything with you, or is it always pretty much just like focus on being in the moment? Or how is that process for you?
It's a really good question, and it's something that we have to be super careful about. And this is why, method actors can really affect your mental stability, because especially if you're playing a dark character or a serial killer or whatever it is in your method, the problem is that your brain doesn't know any different. Your brain doesn't know you're acting. Your brain just thinks you're thinking these thoughts and these dark thoughts. And if you're screaming at someone in the scene, your brain doesn't think, oh, well, he's only acting, this is fake. You're going through an emotional event, and afterwards that come down and that stays with you. And there was one particular movie that I did, it was like a gangster movie, and it was based on real events. And I thought, well, I'll just say the director is a detective, so the stories and all that came from his real experiences with these guys and stuff. But there was one scene in a cottage in a forest at 3 a.m. in the Dublin mountains, and it was like hardcore. It was really hardcore. So much the makeup artist had to leave. She just like couldn't deal with it. It was really, really hard. But it actually happened. And then the guy that was kind of getting tortured, he started freaking out because he was screaming in the scenes. But then he started saying, like, in between scenes, he was like, oh my God, like, if I was screaming for real here, nobody's coming to help me. And he started really, like, getting freaked out. But so that was one that I kind of went away from feeling kind of dirty, kind of feeling, it took me a couple of days because my body didn't seem to recognize that, it was acting. And I suppose these days I'm fairly good at switching it on and switching it off. And I can, I don't know if you notice on Friday, but I could be having a joke, having a laugh, and then scene comes, we do the scene, and then we're back to having a conversation.
I noticed,
stuff,
yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah. I just, everyone's different and their process is different, but I just don't think I need to stay in it all the time. It depends what the scene is. But riffing off you in the scenes was amazing. And the cool thing, and this is the cool thing that I love about acting, and maybe it relates to what I was talking about, that you get to, be people that you necessarily aren't, or your emotions and stuff like that. But like, you as Braden, you're chill, you're a cool guy, you're a cool musician and stuff like that. And then when you see your character in our scenes in that, it's such a transformation between the accent, the body language, and you just completely transformed into a whole other character, which is such a far removal from people as they know you, which is incredible. And I love that about acting. And that scene on the stage, yes, if you can just be fully in the moment, and that's when I'm at my most comfortable, when I know I'm comfortable with the crew and you guys around me, because that was me I was throwing stuff at you. So we shot my side first, so we knew what we had my side. And then the camera was on you. I was like, okay, let's throw some stuff at you and see how you react in the moment. But I had nothing preconceived. I had nothing planned. I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that. And it was just throwing stuff. And you just took it all so well. But even your reactions, something like you said afterwards, you were like, "Oh, were you really annoyed there with me?" And I was like, "No, no." But that back and forth, and you just responding in the moment, and if you can get there as an actor, that you're just dealing with stuff coming at you at the moment, and I think if you can get there as an actor, whether you're doing take 7 or you're doing take 14 and you're saying the same lines, but it should be as if this is the first time you've heard these words and it's the first time you're responding. You should never get locked into this is the way we're going to do it. This is the way we're going to, because then you're not being a human being, because we don't know what people are going to say. We don't know if somebody's going to throw a chair at our head. We don't know. And then when it's because it's written in the script, all of a sudden we do know and we start preempting and we don't listen to the other person. We're just waiting for our cues, you know? So that moment between us in that scene was, you know, that's where it is amazing. And I was buzzing and I was like, that was cool, you know, I was smiling. So I hope that answers your question, but yeah.
No, it does. And it's like the fact that you were in that, it made me get there too more. Like, it's just crazy because it's like you're hitting something that's kind of hard to, you can't really think about it. You just have to like do it. And that was like really a first for me. But I just got to touch on another scene because, and we talked about this, but I'm just like obsessed with it, man. When we were shooting in the bathroom one of the last days at the cinema and it was super late, 3-4 in the morning, we were all just tired. And like just that last scene, man, like just, I was under you filming you, shooting up at you, you know, blood flying everywhere. I'll probably throw up a screen, like a still frame here. But I just didn't expect it, dude. Like, cause you know, it was such a quiet night and what you just brought, like it was crazy to me, and people will see it when the movie's out, but I could see it building in you, you know, and then you just let it all out. And it was just, it was like a spiritual experience for me, honestly, dude. And it just translated so amazingly on film and also in the context of the story. So it was just cool to see that, I guess, you know, cause I'm just fascinated with the whole process and still trying to understand it. But it seems to be, it's like, that's what you want, right? It's like those real moments to come out somehow. So
absolutely. And, you know, full credit goes to your guys' writing and the setup and the scene and the blocking, you know, that all adds into it. And I remember you, Braden, as a director, you came up to me and you were like, you know, this scene later on, you said something along the lines of, you know, I want you to really go for or I want you to get there or something like that, you know. And that's, to me, that's a good director, because you don't need to say any more than that to me, you know. And the way I treat scenes now is I have an idea of them, but I honestly, and I swear to you, and I wouldn't lie about this at this stage of my career, but until you say action, I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. And that's where I've gotten to. I don't know if I'm going to cry, scream, laugh. I really don't know. And, you know, I talked about being able to slip in and slip out, but I mean, while I was waiting where you guys were setting up, I was asleep on the bench outside. And years ago, no way would I have been able to do that. I would have been so nervous and anxious and thinking about it. And even in between takes, if you look at the rushes, I'm sure you've seen it, like I had my eyes closed. I was kind of resting my eyes, you know, even though we were in the scene. And then being able to just go into it. And, you know, there was a bit in that scene where, you know, it was written that it was probably written that I should have, you know, shouted it and got aggressive. And all of a sudden I found myself kind of whispering it and saying it really delicately. And so that wasn't a decision that I'd made. That just happened. And then it escalates upwards. But for me, then that was just, oh shit, and then as a director, I'm like, oh, is that what the director wants? But I'm not thinking what the director wants. I am just literally trying to just be there in the scene, and whatever comes out of my mouth, it's in the moment, you know? And then if the director wants to change it, then I'm like, okay, well, I have a note now. I know I need to adjust it. But when you're given kind of the freedom to do your version in your first take, and that's what I always say to any director, make sure you give your actors their version, because it's the only time that they will give you their version without your note. I hate when directors give notes before you've done your first take, you know, and they would give you detailed notes, and you're going to walk in and then you're going to scream and you're going to do it and do this. You're not giving the actor a chance to show what they can do. Let them have their first take and then make some adjustments to where they want to get to. you know. But I enjoyed that scene. Yeah, I love it, and I'm glad you're happy with it. But I hope you are.
Oh, love it, dude. Absolutely love it. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that was incredible. And it's, I guess, going off that, so you're kind of like you're kind of just like fully present then when you're entering these characters, because like you said, you're closing your eyes in between, you were sleeping before. So you're completely out of your head. Like you're not analyzing anything or trying to prepare yourself for what you're about to step into. So is there a technique that like you specifically use for that? I mean, that's a little counterintuitive to say, because technique is something and you're trying to say that you're completely out of your head. So I guess is just being present and in the moment a big part of it? Or I guess, is the rehearsal aspect beforehand more important, or do those just kind of balance out? Like, what's your process, I guess, for like sinking into a character? Is that like is a big part of that beforehand, or yeah, how are you able to just be on set and it's just like out of your head completely and just show up and do it and it's spontaneous, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, like it took me years to get to any, and I don't always get there. I have to be very comfortable on the set with people that I like working with and respect, and be fully open. And that's how I felt with you guys, you know. I just it was such an open collaborative, and like any suggestions or anything, it was all very, you know, what's the best for the movie, and I love those situations. But absolutely, all the prep is done beforehand, and I don't take the prep flippantly, and I obsess over the prep, and I do so much, and I work loads with subtext and um character breakdowns, script breakdowns, all that kind of stuff. But all that prep needs to go away then. You can't think logically. You can't have your analytical brain switched on when you're on set. You've done all the work. You know the script inside out. You know the character inside out. And then you just let whatever emotions come out in the moment, you know? Like, just for example, right, in that TV series, Brassic, um, it was like the first scene, I was in a car park, and it was like I play like a drug dealer, and I'm walking up to the car to speak to the guy in the car. On my walk up to the car, I spat on the ground, right? I don't spit in my real life ever. I just don't. And I don't know why. I did not think about it. I did not plan it. Just on my walk up to the car, just spat on the ground, right? And then did the scene, director came up to me, fucking love the spit, keep that in. Right. So then for the rest of the scene, every time I had to spit on the ground. But that's just a pure example to me that, and it's not like a boasting thing or anything like that. I don't know why my character or why I spat when me, Baz, doesn't spit in my real life. I'd never dream of it, but I just instinctually did it. So it's those moments that I know I'm in it. I also know I'm in it as well is if the scene ends, and it's not a technical thing because you have to have a technical brain as an actor. You have to understand what lens you're on, what shot it is, if you're in frame. You know, I love when people say, "Oh, like I'm completely lost in the moment," and it's like, well, if you're completely lost, then the camera's not even on you. You're gone. You know, you can't just flail around. So you have an understanding of it. But a bit of a contradiction on that. When I come out of a scene and I'm not aware that the camera has moved, or I'm not aware of the crew, or I'm not aware of anything, and I'm kind of like, "Oh fuck, the camera has moved over there," then I really know I'm in it. I'm like fully invested. I'm not worried about what's going on here in the periphery, you know? Like I said, I don't always get to those moments, but when you do, it's such a buzz when you do get there, you know? It's like the reward for all the work. So yeah, it's taken me years to do that. But and like I say to actors, it's just the authenticity of it. You can be playing crazy characters and, you know, big characters and accents and broad and all that, but it can still come from a place of authenticity. If you're just saying the words and you're not believing the words, then it doesn't matter what character you're playing. The audience is not going to believe it, you know.
100%. Yeah, and that's just kind of talking about the awareness of the lenses and all that stuff. I think, I mean, you have experience with this with doing Dublin Crust, your movie that you wrote, directed, acted in, everything. And I, you know, especially on last showing, I was talking about this in our last episode, just, you know, when we did the previous stories like Hedgemil and the other ones, it was a bit easier because it was less people. It was a little more relaxed. But I remember for this one thinking like, I have to prepare the dialogue because I won't have time to think about that, because I'm gonna have to direct and all this stuff. But sometimes it's like when you're in front of the lens and you're also the person that's doing everything behind the lens too, it's hard to like make that switch. And I've had to learn to like just trust people more. And I think with last showing, like it was cool because we all know what a good shot looks like, I feel like, because we all have, we understand cinematography, lighting, all that stuff, and which I think is amazing. But how did you find that when you were doing Dublin Crust? Just like, because I know you want the shots to look good, but then you got to get in front of the camera and you got to do all these things. Were you thinking at all in the back of your head about like, are they doing a good job with the shot? Like, or did you kind of just let that go? Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll start off by saying like what you guys are doing is incredible, like for such a small crew. And it's like, yeah, anybody can go make a movie, but the understanding that you guys have of the lighting and the shot and the setups and the blocking and, whether it's self-taught or not, and you work so well as a team. And Josh is such an incredible cinematographer. He's got such a good eye. And within 10 seconds of being on set, watching him, I was like, okay, this guy, I'm in good hands here. So
yeah,
because that's the other part of it as well. When you write and direct and you're producing stuff and you're on as an actor, it's not your job to meddle in that. That's not your job. You're there as an actor, but you're still aware of, sometimes I've been on set and I'm like, oh shit, we're in trouble here, because you just see they haven't got quite a grasp on it. But so what you guys are doing for the skeleton crew and the amount of prep and planning and everything is just amazing. I mean, the production values just look like it's multi-million movie, Not that it's not a multi-million movie.
absolutely.
Absolutely. But yeah, with Dublin Crust, I suppose like I'd done it before with my short films. Obviously feature films, such a bigger beast. And, I'm like a broken record, but for those who don't know, we shot Dublin Crust in 7 days, 32 locations across 3 counties. And it was, that was a budget constraint thing. And it was just an absolute moving beast. So we didn't have the luxury of time for setting up. It was literally set up, get the shots done. Like we had shot lists and as much prep as we possibly could. But when you're guerrilla filmmaking like that, lighting, noise, cars moving, people not showing up with keys for buildings that we'd rented, all that stuff. It was just absolutely crazy. But you do need to put an element of trust in your crew that when you're in the scene, especially when you're acting, that they're going to be doing the job that you want them to do. And it is a huge part of it. And there's a million things I'd love to change about Dublin Crust. I'd love to go back and reshoot the whole thing, and but it is what it is, and I have to stand behind it. And it's opened so many doors for other stuff, and it's done really, really well for such a small independent movie. But yeah, it is tough, and it's mentally exhausting, it's physically exhausting. Switching in and out of characters. I'm okay with the switching in and out of characters. I remember the DOP on one of the shots, and it was quite a heavy scene. It was in a coffee shop, and I was talking to Tracy in the movie, and I got quite emotional in the scene. It was quite a heavy scene, and there was tears and stuff like that. But after the scene was cut, I said to the DOP, I was like, "Oh, nice follow on that movement," and he was like, "How the fuck did you notice that?" But even though I'm still in the scene, I'm still aware to a certain extent, because you're still in director mode, So, and you could feel it, I'm sure, Braden, when you're in a scene, and as a director, you can feel like, oh, well, I know I didn't get that, and then you can talk to the guys, oh no, I need to redo that, and you have an awareness, even though you're invested in the character, you're still aware of the bigger picture of what you need in the edit room, so I think that's the trick.
100%, man. Yeah, and I think that's where because you're talking about ADHD. Me and Dustin were just talking about that. I think we're both probably undiagnosed ADHD. Right. Got three Scorpios here, but yeah, but I do feel like in a way like that hyper awareness is like a blessing and a curse, but I think it's actually super valuable for creative stuff. But yeah, I always have that, but yeah, I think it's good if you just always hold the bigger picture. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. The ADHD thing and being able to focus on multiple things at one time, but still be able to do the tasks that you're doing at hand, and I'm the same. I've always been able to do that. I've seen friends try it. I've seen friends try to do the acting directing thing, and they'll just hold their hands up and say, "Whoa, that's not for me." And boy, never do that again, or doesn't even get to where they wanted to get, and they give it a go. So it is a kind of a skill. You were saying about the, after shooting it, you had the come down and the burnout. Like I was 3 months after that movie, just absolutely like I can't describe it. I was brain dead. If you'd asked me would I ever make another movie or any, I would have been like, absolutely no way. It was good 3 months, and it wasn't until I kind of came out of it that I realized how bad it was. Even when I was going through it, I didn't realize it was as bad. And then I was like, oh wow, that was yeah, I just couldn't. I just had no energy, no motivation. It just took so much out of me. Because you have to remember as well, even though it was 7 days, it was a year of pre-production before that. It was, and that was every single day, and like just hustling, and then when it released, like people are like, oh, how did it do so well? And how, we got 6 weeks in the movie theaters. It went to #1 on Amazon Prime, and like, how? And then I had people on LinkedIn, big professional marketing teams being like, who's doing your marketing? And I'm like, yeah, 18 hours a day, this guy. Like I didn't sleep. I literally was like 7 days a week running on a couple of hours sleep and just constantly hustling. And that's the side of independent filmmaker that I think a lot of people fall down on. If they get it done and they get it made, right, amazing, well done. And then they'll either hand it over to a distributor and they'll be like, right, that's it, that's my job done. I'm the creative, let it go. Or they don't realize what it takes to get it anywhere. It just sits there, it doesn't go anywhere, nobody sees it. And I always find it kind of funny in a, again, not in an elitist way, but when people hold back and they hide their movie from people who don't know about their movie and don't give a shit about their movie. It's not the next Marvel movie. What are you hiding? You need to start promoting, getting it in people's faces, getting people excited. And that's how we got to #1 on Prime. We had a boiling pot of messages every single day because we were marketing from the minute we started that movie, which was 2 years previous. And if they didn't get to see it in the movie theater, where can we see it? When can we see it? Where can we see it? When can we see it? And then we built that up so much that when it released, we were like, okay, go. And it just absolutely like went crazy numbers on Prime. But it was a year's worth of work for that to get there. When other people are scratching their heads being like, oh, why isn't anyone watching it? And I was like, because nobody knows about your movie. There's 1,000 other movies at any given time that they can watch. Why would they watch your movie? Or even in the movie theaters, why would they pay $20 to go see your shitty little indie movie? Why, when they could go see the next Marvel movie for $20 and their babysitter and going for dinner and so spending £100, and you need to convince them why. That's your job as a filmmaker. Why should they?
Yeah, that's great. It's so funny because it's so many parallels to making music as well. I mean, me and Braden have experienced it. It's like, I think when I first started, I had that mentality of like, okay, I made the song or made the album. Now it's time to just absolutely attack with everything I have, like this marketing aspect. And like I kind of have, as we've both grown, we've probably slowed down with the marketing aspect and, can notice it. It's like noticeable, like, and it's just the way it is. And it comes down to the passion you feel behind the art you're making, but sometimes you get tired of it. But I think for filmmaking, I'm sure it's probably one of the most slept on things when people make an indie film is that insane guerrilla marketing mentality after the fact, because I think there is this disconnect between being a really creative person and then being someone who's very business minded or marketing savvy. And I think that's like the biggest gap with just like that it's just one of those things I think a lot of creatives feel, musicians, I'm sure filmmakers, where it's like, how do I get myself to become like a master marketer as well? And I feel like with Dublin Crust, at least like just talking about it with you in private too, just the amount of effort that you put behind the marketing aspect of it is pretty impressive. And like you even said, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't even some like major, I don't know if it was major studios, but you were saying people were asking you for advice on basically how you're doing it, even though they were like up here,
Yeah, it was funny, it was like, but I suppose it goes back to, years and years and years being in punk bands and doing everything DIY. You know, it was like if we were playing a gig in that town, we were out flyering, we were giving out free CDs, and they'd be copy handwritten CDs, you know, and posters everywhere, and just so that kind of marketing. And because it's a movie about a punk band getting back together, we used that aspect very early on. So we made, you know, pins, we made posters and flyers and made everything very punk about it and played on the punkness of it. So that was our whole marketing key there. And yeah, I see as well, like with the marketing, a lot of marketers, they haven't moved with the times, you know, they're just kind of like, oh, this is how you promote a movie, and we'll promote it 4 days before it comes out, and we'll do this, this, and this. And I'm like, those days are gone. There's too much information on the internet for you to break through. Unless you're a massive, massive, you know, Gladiator 2 movie and you have a marketing budget of millions. When you're in the independent sector, you need to find a way to reach those people, and you need to be very interactive with them. And that will get them on your side. And we also found doing like going to screenings and showing up and doing a Q&A afterwards and getting to explain to them how you made the movie and stuff like that. And then through that, they would tell all their friends and be like, oh, give these guys a chance. They did it like this. And, you know, and hopefully they enjoyed it enough to recommend them. So it was just nonstop. I mean, even those Q&A things, I think we did over 30 of them across the country. And like, that's a lot of travel and a lot of work and a lot of, you know, and there's no one funding you to do that, but you just have to get out there and do it. Yeah. So I think there is a disconnect between artistic people, and they don't have the business acumen. And what happens then is they will hire a marketer, or even worse, they'll sell their movie to a distributor, and the distributor will be like, oh yeah, we'll do the marketing, we're going to charge you 20 grand, and they just hand it over, and then the distributor does no fucking marketing for them. It's like, I have a friend that's with a distributor and they charge them 20 grand for marketing, and I'm pretty active on social media and, you know, movies and all that. I have not seen one thing from them. And I asked my friend, I was like, what marketing did they do? I was like, I don't know. I was like, do you want to ask them and find out? Like, they just take your money. So you'll never see any money from your film because you're already minus 20,000. And they just say, oh yeah, we'll do that for marketing. And then they don't do any marketing. And it's like, or if they do, it's very little. They put up an Instagram post being like, yeah, the movie's available. That's great. You know,
yeah, it sounds like a record label.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's like, it seems like it's a very similar, because I've heard the same story from other filmmakers I know. Distributor, it's the same as label, and I have no problem calling out most labels. You know, like, I mean, there's some good ones, and you're lucky if you find one, but it is what it is. It's like they take your money and they say they're gonna do stuff, and what can you really do? You know,
that's the thing.
Nothing. So
that's 100% same with distributors. I mean, very few, a handful that unfortunately are straight up genuine. You know, there's some amazing Facebook groups, how to avoid predatory distribution, and some of the stories, oh my God, it's like, and some people remortgage their homes to get their passion project made, their movie made, and then a distributor comes along, promises them the moon, the stars, and, you know, it's like, it's the hidden stuff in the contract, same as the music industry as well. You know, if you don't know what you're looking out for, and all of a sudden you're paying for them to represent your movie at a film market, which is great, but you're paying for their flights, you're paying for their hotels, you're paying for their, and it's worded in a certain way that you think that they're, oh great, they're going to take my movie to the film market, which they will, but they're going to charge you shitloads of money. And then you get your quarterly report and you're like minus 100,000, and you're like, what the hell? And then when you see it all added up, you're like, all these hidden charges. So it's a minefield out there, you know, and you go through so much heartache and to get it made, especially in the independent sector, and then for just somebody just to come along and just, you know, and a lot of the distribution companies, I'm sure it's the same as the music industry, to meet certain tax quotas, a lot of the time they need to have a certain amount of movies on their books. So you could just be one of their movies. They've no intention of pushing it. They don't need to make money off it. They don't care. They take your movie and you're sitting back going, oh, cool, we've made it now. And then nothing happens. It just doesn't even go anywhere. It might not even go up on streaming, you know? It's brutal. Yeah.
After your experience with a lot of this stuff, like what, if you could go back and maybe give yourself advice, like if you had made your first film, like how would you say to kind of navigate that? Would you say like it's probably better to release it yourself and just go hard, or you just be really careful with the distributor? I mean, maybe I'm asking a bit for our stuff, but you know what?
Yeah.
Just after having some experience, like what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's really tough. It's really catch-22 because you want the maximum exposure. Distributors will open doors to streamers that you can't directly deal with a lot of the times, which is a tough thing. There is a lot of advocates for self-distribution, and you can get on Amazon, but it'll be TVOD, so it's transactional. So people have to rent your movie, but you can't as a sole distributor. So if it's yourself, you can't get on the streaming Amazon, which is the accessibility. So you're going to rely on people paying $5 to watch your movie, which is a tough thing. So there's pluses and minuses, but I just know and seen so many people get burned by distributors. I'd actually recommend those Facebook pages, because you can type in the name of a distributor. Like you might be talking to the distributor and you type in their name and it'll come up in the conversations of people and their experiences of them, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. And self-distributing, yeah, you have the power and you retain the rights, but it's just the accessibility of how many people are going to watch your movie. And for Dublin Crust, because it was low budget, very low budget in the grand scheme of things. A lot of it was our own money. We got turned down for all major funding. We tried so hard. And we had an Academy nominated distributor on board when Dublin Crust was done. And then we went for completion funding, which was, and I say only 50,000, but in the film world, that's nothing. Just to get it ready for the cinema release. They loved it. They believed in it so much. And then we got rejected for that again. So that was like our fifth big rejection of it. And so we just had to, so we self-distributed into the cinemas, which is apparently never been done here in Ireland before. We were the first ones to do a theatre release like that completely ourselves. And we had to learn the distribution of the theatre world, which, trust me, is a lot harder than it seems. There's so many variables, and it actually cost us money because we were making mistakes. And if I was to go do it now, I understand. We were up in the projection booths. We were learning like firsthand of what we needed and the deliverables, and every screen is different, which is something that we definitely didn't realize. There's digital screens and analog screens, and and each DCP for the movie has to fit with that, and it's just so much that goes into it. But yeah, so there's pluses and minuses, and it's, for me though, it's for Dublin Crust, because it's so low budget, it's about accessibility. So for example, right, when we released with our distributor, we released on the Friday, and our distributor told us that with Amazon, we'll go on transactional, so people would have to rent it. And then within 9 months, if we are doing well and people are renting the movie and it's doing well, Amazon will consider putting us on the main streaming site. So we were like, cool. So we need to get rentals. We need to prove ourselves in these 9 months. So we released on the Friday. Saturday, I was at a screening of a movie that I was in Dublin. I came out and my phone was just like blowing up. I was like, what the hell? And it was like, everyone was like, oh, it's on streaming. Dublin Crust is on streaming. It's on streaming. And I was like, it can't be. Like, we're on transactional. What the hell? Next thing, my distributor rings me and was like, in all their years, they never have had this. So overnight, we had so many numbers and so much traction that Amazon were like, whoa, what the hell is this movie? And they changed us over to streaming. Now, our distributor said to us that you don't make very much money on streaming on Amazon. It's very little. It's between like 1 and 10 cents per full watch, and there's loads of variables on that. So you're averaging, about 3 cents for a watch. So it's nothing, kind of like music, Spotify and stuff. But she was like, you're not going to make as much money. And the other reason behind our decision was, in Ireland, you can't watch this the transactional Amazon. So it's in the UK, so it's different territory. So you couldn't pay and rent Dublin Crust, and it's such an Irish movie that everybody in Ireland was like, what the hell, we can't rent it. So our distributor was like, what do you want to do? Because we can change it back to transactional and you can keep renting it, or you continue with the streaming. And I was like, just continue with the streaming. For me, it was accessibility. It wasn't the money. It was like, I want everybody to go watch that movie. And then we went to #1 by Monday. So, that was the decision behind it. So I'm just saying, just for us, everybody's in different positions, but for us, it's about accessibility.
For sure. I think that's kind of how I feel about Farlight whenever it comes out, and, figuring all that out. So I actually, something I just wanted to ask you, because you were just talking about, being on set and directing, and directing is something like I'm still pretty new with. Actually, you were pretty much the first time I got to actually direct, and I was still very like careful about it. But like as an actor, like what do you want from a director? Like, just, because I'm trying to figure out moving forward, like what's the best way to approach it? Is it like you just want like super direct, this is the vision, or is it more kind of just like do whatever you want and then we'll figure it out? I know you kind of said that, but how do you want a director to like approach a scene or talk to you? Or
I've had so many different directors, and
right.
As an actor, you have to adapt to the director that you're dealing with. What I hope for in a director, though, is kind of the same as when you hire your crew. You hire them for a reason, and you hire an actor for a reason, and you should, respect the actor enough that they have their idea on what the scene is about. Now, the thing about a director is they have an overall view of the movie that sometimes an actor is not going to have, so the actual full tone of the movie, whereas the actor could be just very much concentrated on their scenes and their bits, and so for me, a director that's trusts you to do the job and then is open to collaboration and tweaks and stuff like that, but not micromanaging, not telling you. Or I've had directors and they start like acting out the scene to show you how they want the scene done, and that is just the biggest cardinal sin to do. Because you might as well just be a puppet, and you're like, this is it. There's no personality coming out there. There's no authenticity. So a good director will. He'll never tell you what to do, but if he wants you to get somewhere, he can talk to you in a way. And actors are at the brink of collapse, which is, so you get directors that are not actor directors, and then you have actor directors. Actor directors are so much better at talking to actors because they understand how vulnerable they are. When you have directors, and I've had them, and they just they don't give a shit about how you're feeling or if you're vulnerable or anything like that. They are just like, I want it done this way, and you've other directors then that are more focused on the technicalities. They're more focused on the camera and the sound and the lighting than they are on the actual performances of the actor. Sometimes they forget about it. It's kind of the last thing that they focus on. So I'm giving away like my trade secrets as well. But like when I'm directing, I'm constantly just looking for authenticity. So if I smell bullshit or I smell acting, that's one thing that I won't call them out, but I will adjust it to get them to a real place, But I with the ADHD or whatever it is, I've always been hypersensitive of how someone's feeling. So I know how to adjust my tone to different people. I can see if they're anxious, I can see if they're nervous, I can see if they're holding back or whatever it is. But a lot of the time, my reverse psychology thing, so it doesn't collapse the actor, is that if they do a take and it's not what I want, I will say, cool, we have that. That's in the bag. Now let's try something for fun.
Right. Yeah.
And then the direction will be what I actually want them to get there. But I don't let them think that because if I say to them, oh no, Jesus, no, that's not it at all. What were you thinking? Like not that you would ever say that, but you can talk to actors in a certain way to be like, oh, it's cool. Oh, we have that. I was just wondering, I was just thinking maybe if we try it, how would you feel about trying it like this way? And that's another thing as well. How would you feel about trying it this way? And let them say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Or even if it doesn't to them, and they say, oh, I'm not really sure about that, and then you can explain to them why, And sometimes you'll come to a bit of a button of heads, especially if you've an actor that's quite confident and locked into their decisions and stuff like that. And then it kind of you get a trade-off and go, okay, we'll do one your way and we'll do one my way. All right. And that's the compromise. And usually the actor will acknowledge that, oh, the other way, your way was probably better, because as a director, you should know what the tone is. And in the edit room, it becomes your decision. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to go with what you wanted to direct them as. Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what I think too, is like you just kind of guide it there, but make it feel like it's almost their idea. It just, yeah. Cause for me, it's like, why would you make someone feel bad about what they just did? There's no need for it. Like you can still get there without doing that. So,
yeah, I think sometimes it's an oblivious thing and sometimes it's a power tripping thing.
right.
And I think some of the most insecure directors that don't know what they're doing, they feel like they need to direct or they're not a director. Dermot Goggins, he's the director of Kin, and he's just one of the best directors out there. He's an amazing director, and I teach workshops with him. I've learned so much with him. And he was saying, even on the big sets, he sees people kind of looking at him, because he was like, I rarely direct. He rarely directs. He's really good at talking about the characters and getting to those places and stuff like that. But he's just not a director that's constantly barking at the actors and any of that kind of stuff, because he's all about the performances and what he needs to get out of there. But I do think that's a sign of a good director, when it can sometimes be the opposite, that if they're feeling insecure, they feel like after every take they feel like they need to pick holes in this and say this and do this and this. Otherwise, they feel like they're not directing. I'm very confident in when I know I have it, I have it.
Yep.
If it's one take and we have it, we have it. We'll normally always do another one for safety. And if we don't have it, I'm confident enough to keep going until we get it. So there's that fine line. But I see a lot of directors, shouty directors, telling like, oh, we need you to cry on this one. You never say that to an actor. We need you to cry on this one. You have to cry on this. That's the worst thing you can say, because then automatically the pressure is fully on, Whereas if you talk to them and you say, well, right, so obviously this is, a funeral scene. And have you been in this situation before? And how did it make you feel? And okay, so how do you think your character would be feeling? And blah, blah, blah. And through that conversation, then when they get to it, whatever emotion comes out, but usually if you're a good director, you will guide them to that emotion without telling them they have to get there, Yeah. That's my view on it. Yeah.
And I guess it probably comes with experience. Maybe this is a weird question, but this is kind of like blending sort of the raw authenticity and kind of seeing just what comes out with the actor, and kind of blending from an editing perspective. Is it really just up to the experience of the director and really knowing the script and really knowing how something should come across, to be aware if maybe there was a take that was like incredible and it was super raw and authentic, but being aware that that might not cut together with this conversation that was just, shot previously, and the takes that were probably the strongest there? Like, is that just, I'm assuming it's just experience, but yeah, how does that balance get struck between, wow, that take was so emotional and authentic, and also like, will that cut together with the emotion from the other subject, and maybe in a conversation or something?
Well, that's exactly it. And it's a really good point. And that's all in the prep and the overall vision of where you're trying to get to. And, an actor can be, bawling their eyes out and fully emotional and amazing acting, amazing take. But in the context of what happened before it, how are you going to cut those two things together? How can they go from this to this and this? So yeah, there is having that awareness of it. And this is the other thing with you guys working on Skeleton Crew and lots of independent stuff. Sometimes a script supervisor is really good for stuff like that, or a continuity, person. They're keeping an eye on that stuff, Not so much what you were saying with the emotion and cutting together, but just the cohesiveness of everything, because that's how they're thinking. They're thinking about the edit and, okay, well, actually, they were just crying before that. Now we don't have tears, so we need to get the makeup artist out if they need the tear stick, and you know what I mean? Because as a director or an AD or whatever, sometimes these things can slip through because you've so much going on, you know? So this is why I was so impressed with you guys with such a skeleton crew, and you were wearing all the hats, and you know, you were doing so many jobs, and it's so important to keep on top of things, but there's still things that slip through. It's just inevitable. Like, it's just, you think you have everything, but then you're 14 hours into the shoot and you're tired, and you don't realize then you have the blinkers on, and you know, and then you get into the edit room and you're like, oh shit, you can see that light in the background, or you know what I mean? And these things happen, and that's filmmaking. And even in the biggest productions, I mean, there's Starbucks coffees on Game of Thrones, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
these things happen. But yeah, just on your point, yeah, I think being the director, having the overall vision, and being able to guide your way through that, and then I was saying about, you know, letting the actors have their take on it, and yes, definitely, but at the same time, you can't let them take over and run the show, you know, because you get that with actors as well. If they smell weakness off you, and that's, you don't have to be power tripping around like that, but you just have to be very confident in your film, in the film that you're directing, that you know exactly what it is. Because if you're kind of like, maybe we'll stand over there, and maybe do you want to try that? You know, all of a sudden, then the actor's like, oh shit, right, I'm going to show them. And they start kind of taking over, and it's not really what you want as a director, you know. So it's just it's a fine balance, you know. But yeah, you did it well, Braden. Don't worry.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think for me, it's just like, I usually have just such a vision. Like, I know it inside and out. It's just how to convey that to everybody else, and also allow people to feel like they're part of making that too. But yeah, man, it's interesting too, because even when you're filming, like, you're a lot of times shooting not chronological order. So you have to remember the context of every scene too. It's like, you might be shooting the middle of the story at the end, or, you know, and that's another thing. There's just so much, dude. There's so many parts, but somehow, you know, we pull it together and do it. And I wouldn't want to do anything else. So yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible, that feeling, and as exhausted as you are, and it's like 6 a.m. in the morning, and you're like, what the fuck am I doing with my life, you know? But it's then, you know, when you get into the edit room, and eventually when you get it onto the screens, and you know, it's an amazing experience. But it definitely is tough. And then with the, you know, especially in the independent filmmaking as well, it's like, you know, it's tough when you have your vision and you know exactly how you want it to be, but then you have to be open to adapting and overcoming if something gets in the way of that. And you need to be able to, you can't be so locked into decisions that you can't flip it around and make it work, you know. Like, again, on Dublin Crust, we had a car sales room. I'm sure I told you the story to you guys before, but we had a car sales room. We had the insurance. We had like 40 cast and crew. It was Sunday afternoon. It was 2 p.m. and nobody showed up with the keys. Ringing, emailing, texting, no reply. About an hour went by, losing time. And luckily, my brother owns like a print shop in the same town. I rang him. I was like, "Get the keys," and he was like, "For what?" I was like, "Just get me the keys." And we moved the whole location over there to his print shop. We used one of his offices as the car sales room, and then in the car park, the parking lot, we put like for sale signs on people's parked cars, like randomers, people's parked cars, and they were coming back. And we were like, please, for continuity, just let us get this shot. You know, everyone was cool about it, but that's literally, we used like a car lot, put it on so to make it look like a car sales room. And but if I had it crumbled in that situation and we hadn't been able to adapt and overcome, then there's no way financially, crew wise, we would have been able to go back and do that. So it's like, right, what do we do? What can we make work? And you just need to be really entrepreneurial in that moment and not show the cast and crew that you're freaking out. I was laughing. I was like, oh, yeah, here's independent filmmaking. But inside, I was like, oh my fucking God, you know, it's like, but yeah, so that's what ended up in the movie. And it's like the plans that I had, because that the car sales room that we had was like, it was beautiful. It was all glass interior. It was like really nice. And that's what was written in the script, you know, that he had this. And then all of a sudden it went to this crappy office in this crappy parking lot. And we had to just adapt to make that work, you know. And so what you see in the movie is what we did on that day, but it was chaos. It was just chaos. And you need a good crew as well to be able to go with you, be like, no, Baz, yeah, we're going to make this work, right? Let's go, And by the time we got over there, we were losing light, and it was like, it was all meant to be interior, and then all of a sudden you're exterior, and you're like, there was so many seagulls because that place was down by the ocean, and it was just chaos. But that's indie filmmaking, so you just have to roll with it and see what happens.
Yeah, and sometimes you just need someone else to be like, it's okay, because
Yeah.
it's so easy to get so tired and stressed. And I feel like Josh usually does that for us. Like he somehow keeps a good like energy, and sometimes you just need that because you're just falling apart. But
he's such a cool, such a positive guy, such a little workhorse. As well as being so talented, and that his attitude was amazing, because no offense to the DOPs out there, but they can be quite grumpy, they can be, a lot of them can be, because they're, and they work long hours, and it's a tough job, there's a lot of pressure on them, but they can be. But when you have someone like Josh that's willing to, 6 in the morning, yeah, let's keep going. You were saying on Hedgemill, he was driving back and forth to his other job, in the middle of the night, 6 hours or whatever it was. And so people like that are gold dust. And what I love about this industry is that you will take Josh with you throughout the career now. He's just one of the good people.
yeah,
And I hope like in 15 years when you're making multi-million movies together that it's Josh and you guys, and so yeah, I love
100%,
that
man.
about it. And we always try and take the good people with us.
Yeah, I think me and Dustin both feel that way. It's just keeping the team. It's probably easier said than done, but yeah.
Yeah, and I guess yeah.
Sorry.
What were you gonna say? Okay. Well, I guess what I was it kind of gets into a question I had written, but I know you kind of talked with us about this, where sometimes it's hard to find like people that you can trust. They're good on set, and you have these like just great great synergy, especially when things get tough. But this is I guess this is like a little bit of a this is a little bit of a different question, but so I did finally watch Kin. Absolutely incredible show. Highly recommend it to everyone out there. And I know you're on that set, and that is a different from the independent world. That's like major production. I mean, I thought it was some of the best cinematography, composition, lighting. Like, I mean, it was incredible to me personally. What did you learn, coming from just comparing like the independent world and I guess what you've done on your own? And yeah, like what did you learn being on a set where, in my opinion, things were executed to almost a flawless level? And I guess like being an actor, I suppose it's harder to see all the details of everything because you're, focusing on your role and all that. But is there anything you learned from that, just kind of a person could apply as an independent filmmaker besides having millions of dollars?
Yeah, that's the key element,
That is the key.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, credit goes to Dermot Goggins, because that whole style, him and the DOP, Ralph, they constructed that together, and that was the aesthetic, and that was the pitch of Dermot Goggins, and that it never changed from his pitch to inception. And again, this is like, Dermot Goggins with, if you notice in Kin, there's so much negative spacing, and he talks about it in the workshops that I do with him, and if a family member of Kin is the one that's going behind their backs or something, he will have them in the negative space, and all the other family will be in this. And so like just on a mind level, you don't realize it when you're watching, but he is like ostracizing them out of the frame on purpose to feed in. So there's so much, like, that man is, his thought construction and his prep is like, I've never met anybody with him. He's such a deep thinker, and every single shot, no matter what it is, and it can be something just flippant, he has a reason for the camera where it is and why it's there, and those wide shots, why it's all aesthetically like that, So yeah, I mean, there's a million things you can learn from these sets, and it's such a massive moving product. Like, there's minimum of 100 people on set usually on these things, and everybody has their own job. And that's it. You guys talked about it on your first podcast, but when you see the credit list coming up and you're like, my God, and each one of those persons, that is their job. They don't do anything else on set. And you as an actor, even if you ask, an AD a question that's for costume, they won't answer it. They will call costume to answer it. Nobody crosses over anybody's jobs, and that's structurally the way it's set up. So yeah, just everything between the camera equipment, what the access they have, and the crew they have, and everything needs to come together. Though good writing, Peter McKenna wrote Kin, amazing writing, great director with a great visual style, great actors. Not me included. I've only a very, very small part in season 1 and 2, but it just being a part of it, being asked back for season 2 was the first time that I'd ever gotten back on something. So that was just amazing, just to be back on there. That was the first time in my career ever actually that I had to do an overnight transition from I was on another movie up until the Sunday night, and we wrapped at midnight on Sunday night. And then the next morning I was on season 2 of Kin at 6 a.m. So like I physically had to take the script of the other movie, scrunch it up and put it in the bin physically for my brain, just to be like, okay, Baz, we're done with this character in this movie now. Now we need to slip into Jed Delaney again. And so that was my first time ever an overnight thing. And it threw me a little bit. I was like, okay. But then once I got my first line out in season 2, I was fine. But up until that moment, I was like a little bit spun out, a little bit sleep deprived. Yeah, so that was my first time doing that. I did it again then recently. I was on Wheel of Fortune. We wrapped, and the next day I was on this movie called Fran the Man, which the cast and crew screening is on the 1st of December now. So looking forward to seeing that. But yeah, so you look every set you're on though, you learn and you take, and like I said, every movie you watch, every TV show you watch, and I was worried though, because I love movies and TV shows so much, that I was worried with the career that it would take the enjoyment away from me. And sometimes I have to catch myself, because I'm like, oh, that lighting is over there, and that extra isn't actually drinking. I'm constantly looking at the moving parts, and I'm like, no, just switch off your brain sometimes and just enjoy what's on the screen. So, but every day
Right.
is a learning day, and if you stop with that attitude, I think you're in big trouble.
Yeah. It's funny because even on like big budget movies, there's still so much like continuity stuff that's not right. And like if you watch, if the camera's on somebody and you see the other person talking, it's never matched up to the end. I always watch extras in scenes too. I love it. But it's like, unless you're thinking that way, you're probably not going to notice that stuff. But yeah, man.
Yeah. I wonder if the regular person watches a movie the same way I watch it. I just can't help myself. It's like,
Yeah.
you just you find it funny, and again, like I said, just even from bad movies, you can learn what not to do and what the mistakes were. And same with Dublin Crust. I mean, I know for a fact there's industry people that watch it and be like, oh fuck, like that's out of focus, and that light and that light. And I 100%, because I would be the exact same. But the general public, they know it's a low budget movie, but they are just talking about the story, and they're laughing and they're crying, and they don't give a shit about that stuff. They know it's like I said, low budget, but the industry people are watching it and they were like, oh, this. So it's very different, but I try not to let it ruin my enjoyment of movies. But I love spotting stuff. I was rewatching that movie Drag Me to Hell recently, and I love when I see this. It was Octavia Spencer, who was just an extra in the movie. She came in, she put some sheets down on the desk, and she walked away. And it's like, she's now won an Oscar. She's an incredible actor. I love to see the journey that they all come from somewhere. I love seeing actors that are famous now, and you see them and they don't even have a line, or they have like one little line in something in 1987, and you're like, oh wow, they were doing it all the way back then, and then suddenly they're an overnight success. They're usually never an overnight success. It can take 20, 30, 40 years, Dustin, you watched season 2 of Kin as well, did you? Or just
I
one?
did, yeah. I watched both, and I think you played Jed Delaney flawlessly. Just
thanks. You have to say that. But I was talking to Francis McGee, who plays Bren in season 2, which is the main bad guy. You know, he's incredible in it. You know, and I sat down with him on lunch, and it was he was just like, oh, you know, he was saying, because we'd just done the scenes together, and he was like, oh, that was great or whatever, you know, and I was like, oh, you're amazing. And then I was saying to him, Jesus, like you've like 160 IMDb credits, and he was like, oh, do I? You know, he'd no awareness of it. And if you look at that man's career, you know, he's been going for so long, and you look at his IMDb and you look at like his track record to get him to where he was, and he was such a humble, lovely guy. Like he plays such a bad bastard in that program. But he was saying that he still gets anxious and he still feels like he's out of his depth, and because he was saying that to me, and that's why I brought it up. Then I was like, you've done like 160 movies. He's been in DC movies and all this kind of stuff, you know. But I just love seeing career spans of where people come from, and it's really motivational then for anybody in the industry to be like, you just have to keep going. It could take 20 years, but you just need to keep going, not give up. And you know, John Hamm said the same thing. It took him 10 years of knocking on doors before anybody opened the door for him, and every single person that he was auditioning with, every single one had gone. They'd all left Hollywood, and he was the last one remaining. And he was like, literally, they had to let me in because I just kept showing up, knocking the door. And that's kind of the mentality you need to have.
Yeah, I agree, amazing. 100%.
Yeah. I feel like with acting, it is nice in filmmaking. I feel like age it absolutely doesn't restrict you at all, because there's always a role for everybody in any, like in different contexts. I feel like sometimes with music, you just feel the pressure of age like more, which I feel like shouldn't be a thing. But I don't know, Braden, if you feel that way too, but you always feel like age is like against you with music. But I do feel like it's cool when you see like actors, you know, come into their prime, you know, much later in life too. And some of like the most revered actors too. And it's just like, I don't know, it's really cool to see that, I think.
Yeah. I think, with music, it's interesting because for me, I only feel that when I like am trying to be a certain way. Like I want to be the emo kid, you know, it's like, well, I'm 30, so it's not going to work anymore, you know, but I feel like with music now, like my relationships just changed with it where I'm not like that attached to it, but I do think about that with acting and stuff. But yeah, then there's so many people that they broke, you know, their career broke when they're 40, 50, you know. So
like Morgan Freeman, you know, Samuel L. Jackson was quite late to the game. There's so many examples of that. You know, even Michael Caine, he retired, he kind of gave up, and then it was who was it? I can't remember, but he was asked to come back and do a movie. Jack Nicholson asked him to come back and do a movie, and then he kind of had the resurgence of the career that we now know him as, you know. And but I just fascinated with all that kind of stuff. Jenna Fisher from The Office, who plays Pam in The Office, I listened to her like book on Audible. And it's really interesting. But she was like 9 years out on her own in LA. Same thing. Got very close, but just auditioning. But it's great when you hear that she got the audition for the Office, and she had auditioned for this casting director like 3 or 4 times, and she was very close to getting something with her. And she kind of broke the cardinal rule, and she rang the casting director, because it's just, there's so many, you know, rules in the industry, and you shouldn't ring you probably shouldn't ring. But she knew her, she'd worked with her, she'd come close, and she said, look, I'm sorry for ringing you, but do you have any advice for it? And she goes, oh, I'm so glad you called me. She goes, yeah, absolutely. I want you to come in with absolutely no makeup on, dress down, wear your most boring clothes. And in the audition, anything they ask you, I want you to be the most bored you've ever been in your life. I don't want you to be excited about anything. Don't want you to try to be funny. Just come in, the most mundane, you work in an office kind of thing. And she said then when she arrived in for the audition, everybody else auditioning was completely dolled up, hair up, you know, all glamorous, lipstick, all that. And she was like, oh, God, wasn't expecting this. And she went in, and every question they asked her, she was, you know, how do you feel about working here? She's like, hate it. Can I go? She kept saying, can I go now? We finished. You know, so everything was just completely mundane. And then I think she says in the book, she just was going to get back into her car, and she got the call, she got the part, they loved her. But if she hadn't have rang that casting agent for that advice, she was gonna play it exactly, because she was like, oh, it's a comedy. Steve Carell's in it. I'm gonna, try and be funny, and that's the opposite of what they wanted. So my point is though that before she got that break, she had been 9 years, and she just said she was too embarrassed to go back home because she just felt like a failure. She'd no money, she'd no reason to be there. She wasn't booking anything, but she just said every one of her friends, they all went off. They finished, and she stayed in because she was just too embarrassed to admit defeat. I just love hearing stories like that, because you just have to you just never know, and if you're not there to answer the call or the door, then obviously you're never going to make it. So you just have to hang on there and see what happens.
100%. You just kind of gotta believe it's not too late, because it's so easy to start thinking that way. So
yeah, we're on worst enemy, absolutely. Yeah. But like I said, imposter syndrome every day, and I'm directing these big movies now, big budgets, big stars, and stuff like that. I'm like, who the fuck do I think I am? But it's like you can't think like that when you're in these meetings and talking. You just have to take it day by day, scene by scene, meeting by meeting, whatever it is, and believe yourself enough that you deserve to be where you are. But you constantly, it just feels like you're trying to prove yourself in this industry. It's like, sometimes it just never feels like it's enough. No matter what you do. But it's
100%.
really tough, especially at the moment. It's really, really tough at the moment. But apparently it's good for the independent film sector, because there's going to be not enough content. There's going to be not enough money for these big budget movies, and apparently, who knows? But like, apparently, the likes of Netflix and stuff like that are going to start accepting a lot more independent projects, and as with everything, because I mean, the days of these 300, 400, 500 million movies are going to be gone, because you see how poorly they're returning in the theaters, and the whole market has moved, so that's going to open up a lot more lower budget movies. And the annoying thing is, the frustrating thing is, the 100 million movie, you could make 4 amazing 25 million lower budget story driven movies. And the problem is now everything's being rehashed. Everything is a sequel, because they're terrified of putting anything new out there in case it doesn't. So if something has a track record, they're rehashing it because they think there's an audience there. But that's stifling creativity. There's nothing new, and they think they know what the audience want, and it's not what they want. For the most
part, it's usually the opposite.
Not what they want.
It's weird, yeah.
Yeah.
Like they make people stop doing what they were doing.
Yeah, and it's the sequels and the rehashing are normally big disappointments. I mean, you can't name too many that they've sequelized 20, 30 years later, or rehashed, that's been anyway better or close to the original. But yeah, story-driven movies are the way to go, but they're just not getting the accessibility that people need for them to see that, Right. But yeah, it's, who knows? Everyone keeps saying survive till 25 in the industry, so
yeah,
we shall see.
I just wanted to ask Baz kind of what's on the horizon right now. I know you've been talking about directing this new movie, having some of the imposter syndrome, but yeah, like what can you say about this new project? I don't know what you're allowed to talk about with it, but it seems like really exciting. Like I've loved every time you've brought it up. So yeah, I guess like what's on the horizon for you moving forward then?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the road and the path is at the moment is very much on the directing side of things. So the big movie that I'm on for directing, and again, it came directly through Dublin Crust, and I don't want to minimalize what we did, but it's just like, again, this shitty little indie movie that has a lot of heart, and the producer of this big movie loved it, and it's based on I can say it's based on a Formula One racing driver that is from Ireland, that is one of the fastest that's ever gotten into a car. But he's a bit of a wild man, and he was the Formula One world didn't seem to want. He didn't fit the mold, and normally there's a lot of money to race, millions, so you come from a rich family, and there's kind of a prestige to it. Whereas this guy came literally from rags to getting in the car and beating everybody, and that pissed everybody off because he was better than them, and he was a bit of a party animal and just an amazing character. His story it's a hero's journey, and I just hung out with the real guy it's based on. I'll just say it's Tommy Byrne is his name, and there's a documentary on Prime about his life. There's an amazing book as well, so this is the feature film. But I hung out with him there for the last week, and he's such an incredible guy with such amazing stories, and what he did and how he got there is just amazing. So, I mean, there's loads of humor in it, and there's the racing side of it, and there's so many elements of his story that's like, it's almost unbelievable until you talk to the people that were there, and it's like, no, that it actually happened. Like, everything that he says in the book, and it's true, So, so lovely guy. So that's the big one, and there's some big names attached to it, and yeah, it's huge. And then Repent, which is my next own feature film, which is a psychological horror. Definitely a passion project of mine. That's going next year as well. We have an amazing producer and executive producer on board for that. So we're busy working. I'm really excited about that one. And then my wife, Emma Ray, which is my producing partner as well, she's written and directed a movie called Jarrig, which is a vampire story set in the 1700s in Ireland. So that's got like castles and horses, and yeah, so that's exciting. So they're the main ones that we're working at the moment. There's also a Scottish crime thriller feature film written by Chris Black, no relation, that is also going to be shooting next year. So that's kind of like Expendables meets Peaky Blinders kind of style. Really good script. So yeah, they're all the things for next year, and I just hope that they all go and they all get there and get ahead. But you just, again, in this crazy game, you never know, and hopefully I'll be back out filming with you guys in next year for Farlight.
Yeah, man. I was gonna say, yeah, we really hope to have you back for that, and yeah, it was an honor working with you. Like, a lot of fun, and the film is it's been dragging on for a long time, but really just want to wrap it up early next year and get it done. And we all appreciate you being a part of it. Just it being our first film, it is really cool for all of us to have someone like you, wanting to do it and being excited about it. So
yeah, well, no, it was incredible. And I only get on board with people that have the passion and the vision, and we were speaking about it quite early on, and we met through a podcast, which is crazy. Yeah. Thanks to Tom Stevens and the guys putting us together at the Chronicles. So yeah, through that and the conversations, and then the script being so good, and the character, it's one of my most favorite characters I've ever played, and yeah, the passion, and there was slight trepidation before I got out there and got on set, because I saw what you guys did with the first two, and it was amazing. It blew me away. It was incredible. But until you're there, you just don't know. And then luckily within the first few minutes, I was like, okay, cool, we're good here. So yeah, I'd love to just keep shooting with you guys just forever.
Same,
so
man.
Yeah, I'm excited to get back out there.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah, thank you for being our first guest on the podcast too, and sharing some of your insights, and hopefully you enjoyed it.
Are you welcome? Yeah, hopefully I didn't talk too much shit.
No, this one's about you, so it's great.
Well, you ask me a question and I go off on tangents, but hopefully it makes some sense. Yeah, just to some people. And if any of the stuff I always say as well, it's never preaching from a higher place. I don't have it figured out. I don't know. I'm fine on my feet. I'm no better than anybody, and any of the mistakes I've made, if people can learn from the stuff that I talk about mistakes wise and help them, that's what I'm all about. But in no way, shape or form do I have it figured out. And we just have to keep hustling and working hard.
Well, you're doing pretty well, so
well.
Yeah,
thanks again, Baz. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, man.
Very welcome.